Hello all, welcome back to the channel. In today's class, we will be discussing about the statements and let's have a quick recap of what we have completed in the last class. Okay, in the last class, we discussed about in detail about the characteristics of what is a primary key. We discussed about what are the characteristics of a primary key, and then we also discussed about what is a foreign key and what are the characteristics of a foreign key, and then we were also trying to discuss the difference between primary key and foreign key and what is a null constraint. All these things we discussed with respect to constraints. Okay, in today's class, we are going to start one new topic by name SQL statements. SQL statements is a new fresh topic that we are going to learn. Okay, before understanding what is statements or what is SQL statements, you have to understand that so far whatever we have covered are just the basic fundamentals to write a SQL query. At the end of the day, every data engineer or every SQL engineer should be able to write a SQL query. For that, whatever is required, I have covered thus far. And from now onwards, I will be helping you to write a SQL query. Okay. And in the last class, we covered about what is a data type and what are the data types that we have in SQL. And then we covered what are constraints, why do we need constraints, and why constraints are data and the data types are required. We also understood because we wanted to have the data entering into the table should be validated. For that reason, we need the data types and SQL constraints. In today's class, we are focusing on SQL statements. Let's understand what is a statement. What is a statement in a SQL? Okay, this is a fundamental topic. Pay close attention so that you will be able to understand what is a statement in SQL. Now, I'll give you one simple example. A statement in SQL, imagine that it could be a command or a set of instruction written in SQL language that tells or speaks to the database and tells what action it has to perform. Okay, that is called as a statement. So let's write it down in words. A statement. Okay, let us write a statement. A statement in SQL, and statement in SQL is a command. Or it can also be an instruction, or it can also be an instruction written in which language? Written in SQLs, written in SQL language. To whom it is written to whom it is written to whom it is speaking to, it is speaking to the database. So can I write it is written in SQL language that tells the database what action to perform, So I repeat, a statement in SQL is a command or an instruction written in SQL language, which is trying to speak to the database and it is trying to perform some action on it. That is what I'm trying to give here. A statement in SQL is a command or instruction written in SQL language that tells the database what action to perform. Now, when I say what action to perform, let us list it down. What are the actions that, when I say, when I say it, that SQL can perform some actions on the database, what are the actions that we are trying to say? So when I say actions, when I say actions, it can include creating tables. It can include creating tables. It also includes, inserting data inside the table. It also includes, updating records inside the table. Also includes, retrieving information also. And then when I say action, it also includes, controlling access. Okay. Now let us recap. What is a statement in SQL? A statement in SQL is nothing but a command or instruction, which is written in which language? It is written in SQL language. To speak to whom? To speak to the database. For what reason? To perform an action on the database. Now, if I say some action, what does the action means? Actions can include creating tables, inserting data inside the tables, updating records into the tables, retrieving information from the table, and also controlling the access. All these things, we can conclude or we can put together in actions. The next thing is that imagine the statement in SQL is just a one sentence. Imagine a statement in SQL to be a sentence in English. After every sentence, do we have the practice of keeping a full stop? Likewise, after completing one statement in SQL, we have the practice of ending the statement with a semicolon. So can I say each statement usually ends with a semicolon, usually ends with a semicolon. How does a semicolon look? Semicolons look like this. Semicolon look like this. Okay, not always this is required, but if you are following, if you're after every statement, if you're trying to close that, end the statement with a semicolon, then it is a good practice. So can I say it is not mandatory, it is not always required, it is not always required in SQL Server, but it's a good practice, but it is a good practice. This is the point. Okay, let's also give you this point that imagine that the SQL statements is like a sentence, so that each sentence is, we are talking to a database. So let me give you that point also. Think of SQL statements as a sentence. You speak to the database. You speak to the database in its own language, in its own language. Okay. So we understood what is a statement in SQL. A statement is nothing but, hello? Okay, what is a statement in SQL? A statement in SQL is a command or instruction written in SQL language that tells the database what action to perform. Okay, so we also understood what are the actions it is doing. It can include creating tables, inserting data, updating records, retrieving information, and controlling access. Okay, each statement usually ends with a semicolon, as we know. And think of SQL statement as a sentence we speak to the database in its own language. Now let us understand for what reason or for why do we need a SQL statement? Why do we need a SQL statement in the first place? Without a SQL statement, can we not directly talk to the database? Why do we need SQL statements in the first place? Okay, let's understand that SQL statements does the following thing. SQL statements are used to for the following reason. Now, this reason, whatever I'm trying to give you, you will be able to understand when I'm giving you this reasons or where it is used. You will be able to understand for what purpose and why do we need a SQL statement. Why do we need a SQL statement? SQL statements are used for the following reason. Let's understand them one by one. If at all you want to define the structure of the table, define the structure, how many columns you want, how many, what are the column names you want to give, and what are the column data types that you want to give, and what are the column constraints you want to give. All these things, if you want to define the structure of data, how many columns in a table, what are the schemas meaning what are the column names, column data type, and if you want to define the indexes. For all these things, we definitely need a SQL statement. For that reason, SQL statements are used. Okay, SQL statement are used not only to define the structure of the data, it is also used to manipulate the data, manipulate the data. For what reason it is trying to manipulate the data? Say, for example, we want to insert a data, we want to update the old data with the new data, or we want to delete the data. When I say manipulate the data, I am meaning I want to insert a new data, I want to update the old data with the new data, and I want to delete an existing data. So for all these things, manipulating data, I definitely need a SQL statement. And then the third important reason is very, very important. In order to retrieve the data, retrieve data meaning if I want to fetch the data from the database, if I want to fetch the data from the database, again I need SQL statement. What is the next thing? If I want to control user access and permissions, who should be accessing what data and in what point they should access, until which level that they can access, all those things can be given, or those things can be done using a SQL statement only. And the last important thing is that in order to maintain the data, or in order to maintain transactions, we call in short form as commit and a rollback. For all these things, we definitely need a SQL statement. For what are the reason we need SQL statement? We need SQL statement to define the structure of data, manipulate the data, retrieve the data, control user access and permissions, maintain transactions. All these things we will be studying in detail. So do not worry if you are not able to understand that the length and width of what I'm trying to say, but understand that for defining the data, manipulating the data, retrieving the data, controlling the data, and maintaining transaction, definitely I need a SQL statement. The last important point is that without a statement, the DBMS or the RDBMS won't know what action you wanted to perform. So let me give you the point. Without the statements, the RDBMS won't know what action to perform on the database. Okay, so this is an important point where if at all you want to make any actions, anything on the RDBMS, you should know statements, or you should take the help of the statements only, then you'll be able to do it. The next important thing is that we understood what is a statement in SQL. We understood why do we need a SQL statement. Let's understand what are the types of SQL statements we have. Okay, let's put it down. Types of SQL statements. Okay, so to give you a gist or the glimpse, I would say that we have five categories of SQL statements. We have five categories of SQL statements. Let's understand them one by one. So on the upper level or on the higher level, I would say that SQL statements are broadly categorized into five categories. Each category is serving a different purpose. Okay, so let me put that. SQL statements are broadly classified or broadly divided into five categories, each serving a different purpose, each serving a different purpose. So when you are learning these five categories, you will know for what purpose these SQL statements are used. The first category, we call that as a DDL statement. We call it as a DDL, or I will give in a full form data. We have the first category SQL statement called as a data definition language. We have data definition language. In short, we call that as a DDL. The first SQL statement we come across is called as data definition language, and in short, we call it as DDL. Under this DDL statement, we have four important keywords. The first keyword we have create. The second keyword we have alter. The third keyword we have truncate, and the last and the most important keyword under DDL is the drop command. So we have four important keywords: create, alter, drop, truncate, and drop. These are the four reserved words or commands that you will be working and understanding, and then you will be able to appreciate what is a DDL statement is. The DDL statement is called abbreviated as data definition language, which includes keywords or reserved words or commands like create, alter, truncate, and draw. The next important SQL statement what we are having is called as a data manipulation language. Data manipulation language. Now, what is this data manipulation language refers to? In short form, it is referred to as DML statement. And this DML statement, has a three important keywords called as insert is one keyword, and then update is another keyword, and then delete is another keyword under the data manipulation language statement. We have another statement by name data query language. This is another statement. This is the third statement here under the five categories. This is abbreviated as a DQL. Under this DQL, we have somewhere around four important keywords. The first keyword, we call them as a select. The first keyword we call them select, and then you have another keyword by name from, and then you have another keyword by name where. Also, you have another keyword by name order by. So, in total, under DQL or under data query language, you have four important keywords: select, from, where, and order by. All these things in detail we will be studying with what is it, why is it, and with an example. But right now, get an upper view about what are the different SQL statements and what are the keywords under each statement I'm trying to cover. The next important SQL statement is called as transaction control language. In short form, we call it as TCL statement. And this TCL statement, it is trying to have these keywords under them. Begin transaction is one keyword that it is having. Save transaction is another keyword it is having, and commit transaction is another keyword, and a rollback is another keyword or command that falls under the transaction control language statement. So begin tran, save tran, commit, and rollback. These are the four keywords or commands under the TCL statement. The last one what we are having is called as a data control language. It is called as a data control language. This data control language what you are having, in short form we call it as DCL. Let us see what are the keywords under that. Under the keywords under that is grant and revoke. These are the keywords under the DCL, called as a data control language. So these are the five categories of the SQL statements. Why it is used, what are this purpose for this statement, and where is it used, how is it used, we will be studying in detail. Now, this is just an upper view that for every SQL statement, there are three or four reserved words or commands. We will be deep diving inside and we will be studying. Let's jump into, or let's deep dive into this DDL statement, and let's try to understand. Okay, the point, let's take down DDL, abbreviated as data definition language, abbreviated as a data definition language. The word itself, this DDL statement, or this word itself, you'll be able to understand. This data definition language is used to define or modify the structure of the database. Okay, so can I say used this DDL, data definition language? It is used to define or modify the structure of a database. The structure of database. When I say database, I include the schema, I include the tables inside the database, I include the columns inside the database, I also include the constraints inside the database. database. So this DDL, called as data definition language statement, is used to define or modify the structure of the database. It is responsible to create the table. It is responsible to create the table. It is responsible to alter the columns in the table. It is responsible to delete the columns in the table or completely delete the table. For all these things, there's a data definition language DDL command is used. Okay, let's understand the key statements or the keywords under this particular data definition language. Under this DDL, what are the keywords that we are having under this key DDL, that is data definition language statement? We have create, alter, truncate, and drop. Let's understand what is this for. Create is a command. Create is a reserved word which is used to create a database or a table. Whenever you want to create a database, whenever you want to create a table, then you should be using this create command. So create command create a database object. The database object could be a table, it could be a database itself, it could be an index, it could be a view also. What is index, view, and all we will be studying in the coming sessions. But as of now, understand that DDL statement, under that one we have create command. That create command or reserved word is helping us to create a database object. The database object could be a table, database, index, or view also. The next command under DDL, we have alter. What is this alter trying to do? Alter is trying to do that, it is trying to modify an existing, it is trying to modify an existing object. Now alter itself, you will be able to understand that I am doing alteration work at my home. That means to an existing house or home or building, you are trying to make some changes. So alter is a command which is trying to alter something in your table. It could either mean, when I say altering something in your table, it can either add a new column or add or remove a column from the table, or change the data type. All these things falls under the alter command under the DDL statement. The next thing what we are having is called as a drop command, where this command under this DDL statement says that if you want to say, if you're dropping a phone, if you're dropping a water bottle that is completely lost, and you're dropping your phone, meaning you have dropped it to the ground, that you have lost control. So drop means it's a it permanently delete a database object. So drop, when I say permanently delete a database object, permanently delete a database object. The next command that we have under this DDL, the next command that we have under the DDL is called as the truncate. What is this truncate doing? Truncate is doing one important thing, is that if at all we have a table, in the table we are having 10 rows or 10 records, this truncate will delete all the rows, all the 10 records, but keep only the table heading or the table column will be there, and the remaining all the values in that particular table will be deleted. That is what this truncate is doing. Removes all rows or records or tuples from a table, but keep the structure. Okay. The last thing we have under the DDL command, the DDL statement, is a rename. If at all you want to change the name of a database object, you can do it by using this command. Change the name of a database object. Change the name of a database object. Okay. So this gives you an understanding that this is a DDL. DDL is a statement where under that statement we are having 4 to 5 keywords. We have a reserve, we have create command, or sorry, we have 4 to 5 reserved words or commands. The first thing we have create command, alter command, drop command, truncate and rename. And what are the things it is doing, we are able to see. Now first thing, before let's take up an example and try to walk slowly. First thing is that we have to create a database. Creating a database, only then we will be able to create a table and store all the values in it. So let me give you a syntax meaning, let me give you a design, let me give you a syntax, a formula how to create a database. The formula is that you need to use create keyword, and then you need to use you need to use a reserved word as a database, and then you need to give the database name, and then you need to give the database name. Now this will help you to create a database. After the statement, this entire thing is a SQL statement. After that, you're ending the statement with a semicolon. Okay. Now this is the syntax for creating a database. This is a syntax for creating a database. Now what we will do, we will try to take an example and also try to create it in our machine. So example, how do I create a database? Again, use a create command and the database keyword as it is. And then now I want to give the database name as a SchoolDB. I want to create a data name as SchoolDB and end it with the semicolon. So without any delay, let's take up the SQL server. Let's try to install and let's try to keep it. Okay, just a minute, trying to open. Okay, so here what you can do here is you can click localhost and keep this encryption as optional, and then click on connect. It should be connecting. Now what you do, you can create a new query. You can start a new query here. Now I should be under this databases. There are no other databases called as SchoolDB. So let me create. How we can create? We can use the create command and then the database keyword as it is, and then the school DB, the name of the database I'm giving, end it with a semicolon, select it, and then click on this execute. There is a command completed successfully. Now, if you have a refresh, and then go to the DB, you will see that, under the databases, school DB is created successfully. Okay. School DB is created successfully. Come back to your statement here. After this one, you can mention here, this will create a new database named SchoolDB in your machine. SchoolDB in your machine. Now you have to explicitly say that, going forward, I will be using the SchoolDB only. You need to tell to SQL interpreter, because there are so many DBs, but after creating the DB, you need to tell to the SQL interpreter saying that, boss, going forward, whatever table or whatever transaction I'm doing, refer everything to this, SchoolDB only. So for that, you need to explicitly mention, using a database, you need to mention. What is this using a database? After creating the database, you must switch to that database. You must switch to the database before creating any tables, because by default it will be referring to the master database. But after you have created one database, you need to tell that, you need to refer this particular database. So what is the syntax for that one? The syntax is like this. Syntax for telling to the database is like this. Syntax is, you need to say use and then the database name. Use and then the database name. You need to tell database name. Okay. Now let me give you an example. Example is like this. Example. Now you need to say use, and the database name is what? SchoolDB. The database name is SchoolDB. After giving that particular, SchoolDB, you are closing it. Now, when you are giving this use SchoolDB, you are telling to the SQL interpreter that, going forward, whatever table I am doing, whatever transaction I'm doing, put it everything under, or refer this one as your thing. So use SchoolDB. It says it will going forward. It is switched from master DB to, it is switched to SchoolDB. Now whatever tables or whatever things we are doing, it will try to create in the SchoolDB only. Now let's go back here. Let's go back here. Try to create a table. Creating a table. So what is the syntax for creating a table? Let me give you syntaxes like this. Syntax for creating a table is like this. Okay. So here I am using create command or create reserved word. I am using the table keyword as it is, and then I'm giving the table name, and then I need to open up a simple bracket. I need to open up a simple bracket, and then inside that simple bracket I'm writing the column one, column name one. I'm giving a column name one, and what is the data type of that particular column one name, and then what if there is any constraints that I want to apply, that constraints I am giving. So this is a command that I'm giving. Syntax to create a table is like this. First, use the create command, then they give the table. I want to create a table, and then give the table name, and then open up a simple bracket, and inside the simple bracket give the column, first column name of your table, and what data type it is, and what constraints that you want to pass, give that one. And for every column, separate one column with another column by a comma. So you should see that, I am separating one column with another column by a comma. Next thing is that I am creating column name 2, I am creating, and then likewise I'm giving the data type, and likewise I'm also mentioning if there is any constraints. If I wanted to give, I can give it. After every column, separate that column with a comma. Now column name and data type is mandatory. Constraints are optional. If you need, you can give, otherwise do one. So this belongs to column 1, this belongs to column 2. Likewise, you can give any number of columns, any number of columns. After giving everything, you can close the bracket and end it with a semicolon. Now let us see an example. That's the syntax. Let's see an example for it. Okay. Now, now when we are taking up the example, let's try to understand, before going into the example, let me explain what are the things it is here doing. Now, when I say table name, when I say table name, this table name is nothing but a name of your table. When I say column name, column name, this column name, we have different name meaning to it, different words for it. If you remember that, I have given column name as an attribute also. Okay. Attribute, it can also be called as attribute, or it can also be called as a field name. Okay. And then the data type, when I'm saying data type, what are the data types that we have read so far, that we have completed so far? Already done that one. We know that we have integer data type, varchar data type, and the date data type. All these things falls under the data type. When I say constraints, what are the things that I am trying to mean here? Let's try to list that. When I try to say constraints, it is nothing but the rules. It's nothing but the rules. Under the rules, you will have something by name. You know that, we have primary key, then we have not null constraint. We have, unique constraint. We have, check constraint. All these things refers to that one. Now let's take up an example to see how do we create a table. Example, creating a student table. Create a student table. Okay, let's see how do we create that one. Okay, so come here with an example. First thing is that we need to use the create keyword as it is, and then the table keyword as it is. The table name what I'm trying to give here is students, and then open the bracket. After that, I need to give the first column name. The first column name is student ID, and the data type of that particular column name is integer. And then the constraint is that this is acting like a primary key I'm giving. So each and everything, I'm separating one column by another column by a comma. Next is that I have another column that's called as the name column, and the data type is varchar, and the data type is varchar, and it is trying to accept 50 characters inside that one. And I wanted the constraint to be not null. Everybody should be entering the particular data. So the every column I'm separating one column and another column by a comma. Next, age of the student, and this age I want the data type to be enter, and then nobody, I'm applying a constraint that check age of the student should be always greater than 0. Next, marks is an other column I am creating, and then the data type of that particular column is integer, and if at all the marks is not included, by default I want to enter the student marks as a 0, then close with simple bracket and then semicolon. This gives you an example of how you can create a table, So marks is another column which is expecting a integer data type. If at all nobody enters marks, by default, enter. If nobody enters, default value, let the table itself enter it as a 0. That's what we are trying to do here. So let's go ahead and create this table. Okay, so come here, same thing, create a table, and the table name is a student, and the table name is students, open the bracket, and now I'm trying to give the student ID. I'm trying to give the student ID. This is a first column name. In this column name, I am saying that data type is integer, and the constraint is primary key constraint. And then the next column what I'm trying to give is a name column, and then the data type is varchar, and then the size is 50 characters it can take, and the constraint is not null constraint, meaning the name should always have a value. Next thing is a age column, and it is a data type is integer, and the constraint what I'm trying to give here is check age should be greater than 0. Nobody should give any age lesser than 0. Next thing, marks is another column, and the data type is integer. If by in default, nobody enters the marks, treat that marks as a 0. Every column I am separating one column with another column by a comma, and the entire thing and this is a opening the simple bracket, closing the simple bracket, ending the entire statement with a semicolon. Executed. Now the table is created. How do I know the table is created? Go back to SchoolDB. Under tables, you will see a table by name, students, a DBO students. This means the table is created. Inside the tables, we have created student ID, name, age, and marks is already created. Now, if I want to insert records into a table, what do I do? So come back here. Let's go ahead and try to inserting records into the table. This is just an example I'm giving, but I will go through it everything detailedly in the coming statements. But for time being, I'm teaching you how to create table, how to insert, and how to fetch and all. Let me try to do it. So inserting records into table, let me give you the syntax. The syntax says that I have to insert into, I have to give, and then I need to tell the table name, insert into table name, and then I need to mention the column 1, column 2, and column 3. How many ever columns there, those many columns you need to give, and then close the bracket. After that one, you have something by name values, and then in the values you can give value 1, value 2, and then value 3 you can give. Likewise, how many ever column you are mentioning on top, those many values you can give. Okay, so this is the syntax. Let's try to put it in the example. Let's try to put it in the example. Okay. Okay. Example. So let's try to put it in example here. Example is again insert into the table name is students, and the column name is student ID. The column name is student ID, and the column name is name, and the column name is age, and the column name is marks. These are the column names, and after that one I'm passing the values. Okay, so I'm giving values here. Inside the values, I'm giving first student name is 101, the student ID, and his name is Rahul. His name is Rahul, and then his age is 16, and he has scored 85 marks. He has scored 85 marks. Likewise, I'm creating another, inserting another record into a table. Insert into students, and then student ID. I'm giving student ID, and then the name, and then the age, and then the marks, and then close it. After that, values I'm trying to give. Now it is 102, another student name. The student name is Priya. Okay, student name is Priya, and then her age is 17. But I don't want to enter her marks. If I don't enter her marks, by default value, default marks will be 0. Yes or no? Default marks will be 0. So let's go ahead and see whether we can insert it or not. Come here again, insert into, what's the table name? Table name is students. Table name is student. What is the column name? Student ID is the first column name. Next column name is name as it is. Next column name is what? Next column name is name as it is. And then what is the next thing? We have the age as it is. Okay, and then we have marks as it is. So these are the columns in that particular table. Now I am entering values in values. In now inside the values, I need to give every single thing. 101 is the first thing, is the first name, and then the name is Rahul. I'm giving name is Rahul, and then the marks, yeah, the age is 16, and the marks what he scored is 85. Close the bracket and end it with a semicolon. Now select it and execute it. You should see one row affected. That means one column is created. Now again I will copy it. I will paste it. Instead of giving, values a student, I will give 102. Now instead of instead of Rahul, I will give Priya, and here age is 70, and I don't want to give her mark. Now the second value second record I'm trying to observe. Okay, since why it is failing? Because if I'm giving the column names here, it is expecting the values also. If now I'm giving the column as marks, and it is expecting to insert the marks, but I don't wish to give the marks. So in that case, you can remove this one and then try to select it and then insert it. It will get, it will try to store. Now when I try to retrieve data, how do I? Retrieving data. Retrieving data. How do I retrieve the data? Retrieving the data is by using the select keyword. How do I do that? I can use a select. And then if I say star, it will select all the columns from the table. The table name is students. Now if I run this query, it will be able to select everything. Come here, selected star, and then from, and then the students table I'm giving semicolon. Now if I run it, it will pull out all the tables. That is the entire table. Here I told you, since I have not given the value as a marks, it is by default taking it as 0 only. Clear? Yes. So by this, we are able to understand that how do we create a table, how do we insert a table. Okay. In the next coming class, we will be discussing, all these statements and all these keywords more in detail. Okay. Thank you.